Hey, everybody. We just wanted to take a few minutes. I don't know if it's going to be a few minutes or it's going to be longer than that to just talk about a couple of things with Chad and Steve have a podcast. And well, now we're calling this Chad and Steve have a YouTube channel so that they're okay. So basically, we've got two different things going on here. There's some overlap, and we've got the podcast, of course, that we started, and that's the focus of everything we do. That's the primary focus, and that's an audio podcast that most people are listening to on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and that's the intended. So what we're doing here is that when we have time, and it just takes a while to just try to edit the video portion of it, we'll put them on YouTube. And I know that a lot of you like to watch those full-length podcasts here on YouTube, so we're going to continue doing that, but we want to add other things specific to YouTube also, and that's a lot of what we want to talk about today.
And that's actually what you're watching right now, which is something other. This was maybe like when we first thought of this idea, we were like, hey, let's just make a podcast about that. Let's do a podcast, which is the state of the union of what's going on. Right. But now we've kind of like set that on a bit of a platform where it's like when it's
so lofty.
To be a podcast.
Ooh, I mean, the podcast,
just had Michael Buckley on. Now we just can't sit around and talk about what we want to do on our YouTube channel. Right. And I guess it made way more sense to separate out the two and put this one on YouTube because, Chad and Steve have a YouTube channel, which was born out of Chad and Steve having a podcast. But because we're still amateurs at the podcasting thing, it does. It takes a long time to put together one of those, and it involves a lot of so we end up being in a position where we have way more ideas than we do actual time and resources to
that's one of the things it would be really nice to get an editor for the video components of it, because that's really time consuming, especially if we wanted to do like a full hour podcast with video overlays of different things that we might be talking about. That's very time consuming, and like I said, that's part of the reason why the video part is delayed. And personally, I haven't given the video podcast a whole lot of consideration because by its very nature, a podcast is an audio thing. But then I see the comments and how people who watch our podcast on the video, they like it, even though it's just talking. There's nothing really happening on there, but I guess people just like to listen on YouTube.
We also realize that it's a podcast about YouTube, so it kind of makes sense. Well, and the editor in me loves putting, thought into it and creating a visual aspect of it. Now that, we have podcasts on the platform, which do have incredibly high production values, and we have fancy mics, actually.
Yeah.
We do have that.
One guy said that your mic was eating you or something. He didn't like your mic.
So in anticipation of this, I put together a list of things that I want to challenge myself for moving forward with this podcast. And one of them, spoiler, is not moving this microphone so much and learning where to put it in the frame and not kind of always doing this, especially when I'm scrubbing through the video. I'm this guy. I talk with my hands a lot. I get that.
That's okay.
I think it is okay. I know a lot of people that talk with their hands, and my dad talked with his hands, and that's where I got it from.
You don't see that when you're listening to the podcast.
However, you do see my flapping arms when you're watching
on the video. Yeah.
So, I mean, with that being said, here, let me go into my list because I did put some time into this. All right. So it's 5 things. The 5 things. I'm going to put a title screen here.
We should do one of those lists, the top 5 things that Chad wants to do.
There you go. That'll be the name of the video. All right. Number 1, become a better interviewer.
Yeah.
All right. Everyone listening to this, we're incredible. I am incredibly new at this. As a person who, not really appears on camera very much in general with the YouTube channel, it was a bit just to kind of get back into a place where I was comfortable doing this and being able to like put all this together. But as I started to do this more with you, and then especially once we started bringing guests on, I absolutely love going and researching someone, learning about someone, and then asking questions, which kind of gets a little eyebrow raised. So I'm really, really going to challenge myself to become a better interviewer and listen more.
I wouldn't say we're struggling with it, because I feel like we're doing okay on the interviews, but when I listen to them, after the fact, I always think, why didn't I listen to the guy talking more, and so I could follow up with an answer rather than just trying to ask questions. And the thing that you and I have both been trying to do is get away from this list of questions. Here's the next question for you. Here's the next question, and just engage in a conversation. And so the last couple of interviews we've done, I think we're doing a better job at that, but it takes time. For what I've been doing is I just kind of been coming up with a bullet list of kind of things. Okay, here's some topics I sort of want to cover. If they come up naturally, I'll ask them. And I always end up with extra bullet points that I never covered, which I think is good, that there's nothing that, that I'm actually engaged in the conversation, and I'm not trying to get through a bunch of questions. So I'm totally on board with you. I want to improve my interview skills. And this is, just trial by fire. We're just going out there and doing it the best we can. And I think we're doing an okay job so far.
Number 2, continue to be inspired by, I know that sounds like a bit of a weird point, but to be continued to actually follow through with the execution of being inspired by these other people. I think it's because we're sitting and talking with Michael Buckley and Wheezy Waiter and all of these fabulous creators that we've had. And it's easy to kind of consume content, like watch a video and be inspired, and then you're kind of inspired for 10 minutes afterwards. But I found the inspiration that I get out of doing these interviews, and it drives me to actually do some action, and I find myself actually implementing new things and really taking to heart some of the stuff that I'm hearing. I think more so because I'm like directly involved in the interview, so it kind of almost feels like the person is directly speaking to me, because technically they are. But yeah, just having that inspiration come about and then actually executing it has allowed me to like try so many new different things creatively, and also with the YouTube channel. And I think the same probably holds true for you.
Yeah. I mean, this is what's exciting about these kind of interviews. And we knew early on that we didn't want to, a lot of interviews I listen to, they have like these formats that they follow where it's like, okay, we ask everybody who comes on the show these 5 questions. What is this, this? And it's just such a lazy way of really interviewing somebody, in my mind, because it requires no preparation or no research. When you and I have somebody on the show, we spend a lot of time, I mean, hours, actually looking through their content, trying to find out what makes them tick, finding relevant questions to ask, and keeping that conversation going as best as we can. And again, it's something that we're still learning. I think we're getting better at it.
Next, we need to, and maybe this is great that I'm putting this one in here, we need some help with editing, and perhaps even a producer. As much as this started as Steve and I just trying to do this for a thing to do for us during lockdown and all of the rest, it certainly turned into something much more than that. And now there's the challenge of wanting to concentrate on what's next, like what we should, like who to interview next and what to do next, and all of that, because right now we're getting really bogged down with 3 interviews kind of in the hopper right now, which need to be edited and kind of put out there, and then all of the rest. So some of the administrative work of a podcast like this is really starting to present itself.
Yeah, I never realized how much work actually goes into a pod. I guess you don't really know how much work goes into something until you do it yourself, right? But we kind of, and I'm learning audio editing because I'm doing that myself, and it's totally new to me, and it's completely different than editing videos, and I'm enjoying doing it, and I'm enjoying learning it more. And so I want to keep doing that, but the video component is really, what you and I have talked about is we want the YouTube channel to have its own content. And so that's where we have a million ideas of things that we want to put on this channel. but they're all caught in this funnel of it's just bottlenecked because we can't get it shot and edited and still do our day jobs.
And from a creator's standpoint, the most frustrating thing as a creator, at least personally, is the feeling that all of the work still needs to be done on content before it can come out. And then you can't push forward with new ideas because in the back of your head, it's like clutter. It literally is clutter in your head. All of the unfinished, stuff that then starts to become a lot like work. And that was that fine balance that we were trying to find with this. It was the difference between like it feeling like work and it still serving the purpose which it was supposed to serve in the first place.
For me, it's interesting to see how this has all evolved from where we started with just talking and wanting to do the podcast to bringing on the YouTube channel and just thinking, well, we'll just dump the podcast on there, to where the YouTube channel is ideally going to just be its own thing. And to me, that's really exciting to have two different components that are sort of related.
So that actually is the next point, which is working further and more diligently on the YouTube content and content which is specifically for YouTube, like this is here. And we have a whole bunch of great ideas involving thumbnails and some you pitched a YouTube 101 series, which we would love to do, where kind of helping people go from nothing to like getting started with their first YouTube channel. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that we would love to do. But again, going back to that other point, I think it is time for an editor or someone who can come in and perhaps support us. So if you know someone who's an editor, or if you're a talented editor, ChadandSteve.com. I don't know. We don't have an email address, do we?
We have a forum on the website, don't we, Chad?
We do.
ChadandSteve.com.
ChadandSteve.com. There's a little form. You can sign in and say, I'm an editor and I would love to help you guys out.
That'd be awesome. Yeah. Do we get those emails that come from that forum? I think so, right? It forwards on.
I think so.
We tested it, right?
Who knows which email address it goes to, but so long as it goes somewhere.
Well, we'll figure that out, definitely.
What about you, Steve?
I totally fall in line with your vision of what this is going to be. And I know that this is a constantly evolving thing we're trying. It's all brand new. And to me, it's really exciting that how much support there is for the podcast and for this channel, and for the people seem to really enjoy what we're doing. And I think that for me, the most exciting thing are the interviews that we do, and I want to keep that going. And it was, at first my thought was, we had Matthias Wandel on here, and which was really good for the YouTube channel because everybody wanted to watch it. So it brought over a lot of woodworkers, but I was hesitant about that because I was kind of thinking, well, this isn't a woodworking channel. This isn't a woodworking podcast. And so I wanted people to make sure that they understood that it's not going to be a bunch of woodworkers or makers that we're interviewing on here. What this is it's about YouTube and YouTubers who have been on the platform for a long time and have a special insight. And Matthias was a perfect example of somebody who's been here forever. And what was interesting to me the first time he was on the show was that he had a totally different way of approaching YouTube, different than what everybody says you're supposed to do on YouTube. And it really worked. And he was really successful. So that's the kind of thing that I want to approach all of our guests with, is that they have something unique that they're bringing to YouTube. And, that could evolve, that could change. But I really am focused on that and the audio podcast. And the audio podcast to me is such a different beast, and so much different than I never thought it would be that different, that the numbers on there are huge. It's going up, it's this trajectory that's just going straight up. Of every time we post an episode, it gets downloaded more than the previous one. So it's just constantly going up. And those are people who aren't here from the woodworking community, which I'm happy about, because I want to reach that broader audience and people who are just interested in YouTube and YouTube history, and just shooting the shit about YouTube. I think is really fun.
One of the not having people just also be guest specific. You mentioned the large component of our audience, which came from Matthias.
Yeah.
Thank you all for being here and listening and whatnot. And it's also been wonderful to see some of the comments from all of the people who did come here from other sources, but ended up seeing Shannon's interview or, Tim's interview or Jared's interview and be like, at first I didn't know because I don't know this person or I don't know what they do. But by the end, my goodness, it was kind of really interesting. And it's true, really, when you dig deep enough, all of us have fascinating stories, whether we're actively on the platform, like the majority of our guests are, or if you kind of are behind the scenes like a Shannon is, or if you're, your days on the platform are over, like Michael Buckley, and you have a new position. It provides amazing insight to like what the platform is today. It's nostalgic to remember what it used to be like, and that's kind of what we wanted this to be. It wasn't supposed to just be, oh, if you're interested in starting a YouTube channel,
Right.
Here's some guys or whatever. Or it wasn't just supposed to be like, oh, hey, let's just talk about old stuff from back in the day of YouTube and whatnot. This has pushed you to start doing shorts and use your YouTube channel in kind of a different way. And now I actually want to start using that. I want to start using this platform to start sharing some of the results and start digging into the analytics of it. That's also a really exciting aspect.
That's a great idea, because I'd love to talk more about like my first 5 days of posting shorts, YouTube shorts on my channel, which has been a real interesting experiment, because it's a totally different thing that a lot of my audience was like, what is this? I don't like this. It's vertical and it's different. And after 4 days of grumbling, I think that those people are gone. And today I posted one and it's like all positive. Everybody loved it. So it's just this, I don't want to say it's a learning curve, but there's a curve to any new feature that I think people have to kind of get used to. But I'll save that for another time. I guess we should talk about that, because I think it's worth talking about, and it's worth trying it over on this channel.
Well, we're going to fire up shorts as well over on Clean My Space. Plus, we've been actively using the community tab with the polls and all of the rest.
Yeah, that's another one I've done.
Plus, I've been instituting a whole bunch of stuff. Again, from just being inspired by listening to listening to Craig Benzine talk about a pivot, because a video goes viral and he's presented with like, I guess this is the new kind of form of content that I'm going to be doing and whatnot. And just, I love that, just the his adaptability, and that's just inspiring. So it led me to like get out of my box of like, YouTube's a place where I upload my videos, and if I tick off my audience, well then I better stop doing whatever that is.
Yeah, and I was talking to Antonio, it was the same way, because he was like, him and his team, they just hit every new feature heavy and see how it works. And I was like, why not? I think it's worth giving a try, especially like on a channel as old as mine. It's 12 years old. It's super easy to just get caught in the rut of doing the same thing over and over. And for me, that's why I've been feeling just kind of channel burnout for the past couple of months, really. And having the podcast has been super exciting for me. But the side benefit of that is it has inspired me to try these new things on my channel, which I don't, because I'm also at the point where I don't really care that much about like if people leave the channel or unsubscribe. In fact, I've talked to you about this before. I kind of wish that they would. The subscription number is such an ego number, really. So if a few thousand people drop out because they're just so angry at some sort of short content that I produce, then that's fine. This isn't for you. And I would rather have the people who are just really interested in watching what I produce. And it's just freeing for me. It takes a lot of that weight off my shoulders.
Well, the best part is at least those people go away quietly and never leave a comment to say that they're going to leave.
Yeah. I declare unsubscription.
Allow me to pick up my soapbox and leave now. Unsubscribed.
Right. Well, I think overall, I'm extremely excited about the podcast and keeping that its own thing. And I love the fact that we just dive into each episode, that we don't have the preamble and the, so how was your week been, Chad? How was it?
The weather.
Because every podcast I listen to, they all have that thing. I'm like, well, if I listen to a podcast, I like to just kind of, hey, let's just get right into it. But we have this YouTube channel, so we could do that kind of stuff over here. I think that the podcast is just at this different level than the YouTube channel. The YouTube channel to me is more of this kind of discourse.
Yes, it's just kind of like a big party room where everybody can hang out, and it's much more interactive. We learned that about podcasts, and we came from like the YouTube landscape where it's like you put something up and you get, and we weren't just talking about the instant feedback that we're getting from doing something. And as much as that sometimes can be a negative thing, as we're pointing out, sometimes it's also great to like put something out there and just get instant, positive affirmation and reinforcement that's like, hey, this is doing well, and you see all the likes and whatnot. And that was different for us coming into producing an hour and 15-minute long interview with someone and putting it up there. And I guess you get to see the listens
you get
or
to
the
numbers only.
That's all you get. So to your point of like the vanity aspect of like a subscriber number or something, like that's all stripped out. I think podcast is like really raw that way, and that's why we wanted to have kind of both. And that's also why we saw both as complementary. It allows this to be a position where people can watch it and then go down the comment sections and have input. And I would use this opportunity, if you have made it this deep into this video, thank you for watching this deep into one of our videos. But if there was anybody that you would like to see come on the podcast, if there is anything that you would like to see as whatever, this is also the place for that type of conversation.
Yeah, let us know.
Like, we don't have a forum. We don't really have like no one emails people anymore. So like, this is kind of it. We can have these videos, which are very self-aware and open, and just be like, hey, we have a whole bunch of ideas, and here's some of the challenges we're facing. And that's what's great about this, because it's kind of like the doors are open on everything.
Right. Wide open. So we're working on contacting new people to have on the show to interview, and in between times when we're not interviewing guests, we'll come up with topics. Like we came up with the past, present, future of features, on YouTube. That was real popular. So there's topics we can cover with just the two of us, but I prefer the interviews. I just love them. I love doing those.
Yeah, it's really, I think, because it challenges us both in a way to like grow in ways that like doing YouTube videos is doing YouTube videos. And even if you do them slightly different, you're still kind of doing the same thing. And this was such a switch. And I loved that it was just so long. That was the most intimidating thing for me, was going into a podcast and looking at the clock and being like, okay, it's 12 o'clock. And 1 o'clock is when I'm probably going to finish talking about a subject. And when you're right at the beginning of this and you don't have really any experience doing it, like that is massively intimidating. But it was great to kind of push through that and then go back and watch the content and be like, okay, it's not great because I'm new at this, but like it's really good for a guy who's not good at this. And that's kind of how I felt. So it's been inspiring to just want to like keep doing that. And I love the research aspect.
I do too.
I spend more time doing research for a guest interview in an average week on a week that we have a guest than I actually do putting into like my production work at Clean My Space. Full disclosure. So hopefully Melissa isn't listening to this.
So one of the things that I want to work on is, obviously, if you're watching this right now, you're looking at us and it looks like we shot this with a potato. And that's what the video component is, something that we're working on ways to improve it. And because right now we're just recording this on Zoom. So it's a Zoom call, and then we record and pull the audio out of it. The most recent video or podcast we did was with Hyla Johnson. It's not posted yet. It'll be next week. But with her, we tried a new system. It's called Riverside.fm. And so it's an online recording. It records high definition video and audio, and you get them all in separate tracks. And so I edited that audio, and it sounds fantastic because the voices overlay really nicely, and you can cut out things really easily, but it's more time consuming. And so, which is good in a way for me. It forces me to learn my editing software, on the fly. It's like, okay, I got to figure this out now. And so I'm getting better and better at that. And if we can figure out the video component a little bit better, then hopefully we can start shooting the YouTube stuff on using that, and that should work. Again, that's going to take more time, and that's why we need that editor. And another thing I wanted to point out is what we've talked about is the format of all of our videos will probably remain just like you're seeing it right now, is we are two people talking to each other. Even though we're doing the video, we'll have overlays and we'll show you what we're talking about. We could do screen shares if we're talking about, thumbnails or whatever. But I don't see this as ever being, Watch Mojo or something where it's, you don't even see us. And it's just, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know how kind of like YouTube-y we kind of want to make the content. Like it's hard to, so while going through and doing this, it's hard to like pivot from doing like in-depth long form interviews to like 6 wacky ways to start your YouTube channel.
Right. Yeah.
So as much as like I get that listicle stuff works and that kind of makes content digestible, I currently, and this may change, I currently am more of a fan of just this open conversation, less technical. Like, of course, we could make it jump cutty and put in title screens. And for a long time, I thought that that's probably what would work. But I am more focused on, as much as this stuff is going to be just for YouTube. I like the simplicity of not having to set up my DSLR camera, mic up, worry about the lighting, figure different, kind of sets out, and like have to storyboard stuff. And then it just becomes even like it's already a challenge to just like do something like this and then think about editing and then putting it up, and then the execution of launching just a video and all of the other steps even beyond editing, and like all of that will just start compounding, and that get like, and so therefore the more you want to jump cut it, the more effects you want to put in, the less it's going to be about real raw conversation about what we're talking about. Like Steve said, like pulling in some like screenshots of like, 'cause I would love to do that. Like when we're deep diving onto like the shorts, we should be, sharing your screen and taking a look at all of the different things and talking about, and not worrying about putting this together and what the title is going to be, as we do with our, main channel kind of things, and keeping it just be this. I often refer to it as a rec room where people just kind of come over to listen to albums. I just like that vibe. It's just a place, and you don't need to worry about like, oh, I didn't say the right thing, or I'll take this out in editing, because that ends up kind of taking away from the message or what we're trying to get.
And we had talked about kind of taking some of our videos in the direction of, like I was saying, the YouTube 101 series, which I kind of want to still do that, but in a different form than we originally thought. And so this is a good example of, we thought, well, we can relate our experiences about YouTube and how to help you grow a channel, but we don't want to do like what Tim Schmoyer is doing, where it's just like nuts and bolts, here's how to grow a channel kind of thing. He's got that covered. He does a great
Tim
job.
Schmoyer is doing that.
Why do we want to? We don't want to do that because we're not really experts on it. So we actually shot one of those, and we're never going to release it because it didn't feel right. Because what we were trying to do is, here's my list of 5 things that new YouTubers need to consider, or something like that, and it felt really forced. And so we had this conversation after we shot that, and we're like, it didn't feel right. The more we talked about it, the more we thought, well, this can still work, but what we have to do is frame that into just our experience, and don't have to have a list of, there is no magical 5 or 6 or 7 things of anything, it's just a random number. So we just talk about like, what was my experience the first time I posted shorts, or how did this work out? And so then we're relating an experience from people who have actually done this a while, and just see, here's our results, and you can do with them as you please. And so I kind of like that format, and keeping it conversational.
And content comes out of the conversation, as we're proving right now, 20
Yeah.
minutes into this particular video,
Yeah.
where like a lot of that got left behind because it was pre-established what our 6 points were going to be. And the
Right.
nuance gets lost because you don't want to, I don't want to go too deeply on one point because, I need to get to the next point. And then you don't give much space to anything. And the biggest thing, the thing that sat with me is, over at Clean My Space, when we do a video, 6 tips from a pro to how to clean your toilet, like that makes sense because it's coming
Hmm.
from a pro. As you say, Tim
Right.
Schmoyer is a pro. So if you want to go learn how to start up a YouTube channel, there's no one better on the platform than
Yeah.
Tim Schmoyer. So us coming with like 6 ways to start your channel, we certainly would have insight, and I'm sure it would probably be interesting, and there would be some nuggets of good information if we were to just have a long, nice, drawn out conversation like we're doing about this, because a bunch of stuff is organically and naturally going to like come out. And that's what happened with the podcast. We realized that like we could just talk for an hour. And so long as we didn't really have much of an agenda, just a big kind of container to put what the conversation's about. Like, okay, we're talking about like, new channels on YouTube.
Yeah.
But like, there's no need to be like, here's the 6 points that you need, because it does. It puts it in a package, and that isn't conversational.